of an individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach data protection rules. This is a formal town council meeting and will be held just as those in the town hall, using the agenda which the clerk has published. As with our usual meetings, members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak during public open sessions, but will not be permitted to speak at other times. And when you're not speaking, will you please mute your microphone to help eliminate any background noise? Thank you very much, everybody. I'm now on to apologies for absence, and Councillor Leslie Fage has given her apologies. And I don't think we have any others, clerks.
Yes, I received one just a few minutes ago from Councillor Hazel Ramsey.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest in any item on the agenda, please? Councillor Grant Fage and then Councillor Michael North.
Yeah, item 9F, the conversion of the HSBC unit. I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest because my dad is the chairman of the Liberal Club and I've had a few conversations with him about this application, so I won't be voting on that one.
Thank you. Councillor North?
Item 9L, Broadmead, as is quite close to where I live.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Right, I'm on to Town Mayor's announcements. First of all, I think we've been aware that there's been discussion for some time about decluttering of the Market Square and the High Street. And that means the removal of extraneous street furniture. And due to the pandemic, the government has provided funding for the improvement of high streets to encourage trade, make it easier for trade to happen, and certainly easier for queuing during the pandemic. As a result of this, Central Bedfordshire Council will be removing some of the items like railings, posts and bollards, which they deem are no longer needed. They'll also be updating some of the signage, particularly on parking. Work is likely to start within the next 6 weeks, and the Town Council will publish the exact date when it's known. It's hoped that much of the work can take place in the evenings and weekends, but there will be some disruption to traffic, particularly to keep workmen safe when railings are being removed. Funding has also been made available for the gradual refurbishment of all the bench seating in the town centre. And I think that's been on the agenda for some time. And I know that some councillors have been anxious for that to take place. Secondly, I'm delighted to confirm that our new town clerk, Peter Tarrant, will be joining the council on the 24th of August, and we look forward to his attendance at our next meeting. Philip Truppin and Nina Villa will stay with us in the short term as assistant clerks. Thank you very much. Now on to the public open session. Normal procedure applies. Members of the public may put questions or address council pertaining to matters listed on the agenda. Each speaker will give their name prior to speaking and it'll be recorded in the minutes unless that person requests otherwise. Each speaker will be allowed 1 3-minute slot and there'll be a warning after 2.5 minutes. So I'm now looking at the list of attendees. Is there anyone who would wish to address the council, please? No, I'm getting no indications of anybody wishing to take part in the public open session. So now I'm very pleased to welcome Charlotte Gurney, who is Head of Service for Housing Solutions in Central Bedfordshire Council, and is going to talk to us about the homelessness strategy. So can we invite Charlotte into the room, so to speak, so that she can speak, please?
She should be
Charlotte,
coming in
are you
now.
there yet? Can you hear? Ah, I can see you now. Fine. We're over to you, Charlotte, for what you want to tell us, and then I'm hoping you'll take a few questions from councillors afterwards.
Thank you. I think I'd sent a presentation through and someone...
We're not hearing you very well. Are you able to speak up or...
Hold on. volume levels. Is that any better?
No, not really. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I think, so hold on 1 second. I don't know how to audio settings. Okay, is that any better?
A lot better. Yes.
Okay, so thank you. I'd accidentally changed my audio settings. So,
Right.
okay, I had a presentation that I sent through that someone was going to share.
Have we got?
I've made you a co-host, so if you've got it there, you should be able to share your own screen.
Right, okay. I actually don't know how to do that on Zoom. What I was told.
Okay, Sean's got it as well, I think. So Sean can.
I have it on my screen. One moment, please.
So,
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Thanks, Sean.
Fine.
very much. Okay, so I'll just sort of say next slide once I'm ready to do that. So just for everybody's awareness, my name is Charlotte Gurney. So I'm the head of service for Central Bedfordshire Council for Housing Solutions. And what that means is that I policy lead on 3 areas, which is homelessness, the housing register, and also for private sector housing, which is the environmental health side of housing that deals with privately rented properties and disrepair. What I'm here to talk about today is around homelessness and rough sleeping. And what I've got is some statistics and some data I'm going to share, which is Central Bedfordshire wide, but I've also included some which is just related to Biggleswade, which I think you'll be more interested in. So these are the key pieces of legislation that govern how we deal with homelessness. And really there's 2 on there that have made a big impact over the last couple of years. And that is the Homelessness Reduction Act, which came into force on the 3rd of April. And the new rough sleeping strategy. I keep calling it new, but actually it was released in December 2018. But that gave the government's target to actually end rough sleeping and has sort of governed a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 12 months. So go to the next slide for me. The Homelessness Reduction Act, when it came into force, changed the duties around how we deal with homelessness and the sort of assistance that we give to people. These are the 5 key duties that it introduced, but in reality, what it means is that it means that we would help anybody that was going to become homeless by giving them a housing assessment, a personalised housing plan, and we are now blind to whether or not we consider someone's become intentionally homeless, whether or not somebody's got priority need, and whether or not they have a local connection to Central Bedfordshire. It just means you help everybody if they are threatened with homelessness. One of the big things for that is a lot of the people that would rough sleep would generally be cast as not having a priority need. So a priority need is something that would make you more vulnerable than the average person if you become homeless. That's the legal definition, so not a particularly helpful definition when you break it down. So if you go to the next slide, what we had seen in Central Bedfordshire is quite a rise in rough sleeping, I would say, over sort of the last few years, but not as much as our neighbouring authorities. And I wouldn't say that was because we didn't have a rough sleeping issue in Central Bedfordshire. It's because people would leave Central Bedfordshire and go and sleep in and congregate in town areas. What they said of last year, like nationally, we had at least 2 rough sleepers die every day. So overall, that was 726 preventable deaths that would have been just because people were rough sleeping, and the way that it sort of shortens your average death age. We know that over 20% of the people that rough sleep will end up with mental health issues, and quite a large portion of those would have alcohol or drug issues. And that's not necessarily they have those issues before they rough sleep. That's one of the coping mechanisms that people turn to when they are rough sleeping. So we introduced a Central Bedfordshire outreach service in July last year. And that outreach service worked with our rough sleepers. And before lockdown, we had found and engaged with 60 rough sleepers across Central Bedfordshire. After lockdown, so after the 23rd of March, we engaged with 60 rough sleepers in the first 3 weeks. So these weren't people that had been rough sleeping before lockdown. These were individuals that had had relationship breakdowns, that were having arguments with families and friends because of the lockdown period, people that had lost jobs and then they weren't being allowed to rent rooms and stuff anymore. And then also those what we call hidden homeless. So people that were sofa surfing around friends' houses, and during lockdown, when everyone was self-isolating, they were asked to leave. So in that very short period, it's another 60 individuals that we hadn't come across before. So we know that we offered accommodation to just over 62 people during that lockdown period, but only 48 rough sleepers accepted accommodation during the lockdown period. So it's not as simple as give them a house and they won't rough sleep anymore. So we introduced this new outreach service, and we also developed and published a new homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Now, this is not going to be any surprise to you at all. This is the strategy, priorities and vision. And number one of what we need is we need more affordable housing. You know, that's not just us, that's every single council in the whole country. But what we also did find from speaking to services and people was that a lot of people weren't aware of the work that was being done for rough sleepers or for homelessness. Even of our services and key partner sort of agencies across the board, they knew that someone would come to the council for a house, but they sort of didn't know that maybe you could come to the council because you were struggling to pay your rent rather than waiting until you were in crisis. So we're sort of trying to be working with services and with professionals that go out and support people to make them realise that people can come to us at a much earlier time so that we can try to prevent homelessness. So if you go to the next slide for me, this slide is just where we talk about what their key challenges are for housing. And part of that is the demand that's coming through the door and trying to manage that demand. Some of that is trying to ensure that we actually give a good service to the people that do come in. So we know that people approach us for housing. It's not practical or realistic to say that we could give everybody a council house that comes and approaches the council. It just is not going to happen because of the amount of properties that there are. But at the same time, we do know that we need more. So we know that we're building properties, we're purchasing properties on the local market. But one of the main things we're doing is we're also trying to intervene within the private rented sector. If we go to the next slide for me, there are at least 10,000 households created every single year, that new households in the UK. We know that we've got a large portion of rented properties across central Bedfordshire, and they think, and I'm not saying central Bedfordshire, I would say the local government thinks that about 25% of all rented homes don't meet the minimum standards for what they would want a rented home to meet. But what's happened as we've come into more of a housing crisis and people are struggling to pay rent is they don't want to report disrepair. They don't want to tell us that the landlord's not doing repairs, because that landlord might do the repair and put up the rent and they can't afford it, or that landlord might just evict them and then they won't be able to find somewhere else to live. So some of the work we've been doing is around that intervention, around how we would work with landlords to make them understand what their responsibilities are, and how we work with tenants to teach them to become a good tenant. So it's not, you know, one or the other. There is definitely a 50-50 sort of split here in how we're reacting with people. So we go to the next slide. What I've got is a few slides now that are all around data that I want to share with you of what housing demand is across central Bedfordshire. So this is the total number of people that we've got on our housing register at the moment, which is just over 1,700. So I think it's 1,785. Those are the people that are on the housing register and are bidding for properties through choice-based letting. We've got another 2,259 applications which are in the process of being verified. Now that number stays stagnant. It's always around that. We've had about 1,700 people on the housing register since 2018. So it's a sort of a continuous turnover of, we have people on the housing register, but we don't just look at social housing for them. So we are always looking at all housing options for anyone that approaches the council. On the next slide, which is the scary one, when we talk about housing demand, if I closed the housing register tomorrow, and I mean just like closed it down, said that no one else could ever join it again, and only concentrated on housing the people on our housing register into social housing, this is how long it would take me to house each of those people based on what size property they need. So number 11 is Biggleswade. So somebody that's requiring a 1-bed property would wait 1 year before they could be housed. And that's because of how often a 1-bed comes up and the amount of people on the housing register waiting for a 1-bed in Biggleswade. If they were waiting for a 4-bed property in Biggleswade, that would take them 8 years if I close the housing register tomorrow, because that's how often a 4-bed property comes up. Now that's bad. If you compare that to Dunstable for a 4-bed, that would take 48 years if I close the housing register tomorrow. So it's not a choice for all of us to just stop buying properties or to stop developing or building properties. We need to do something different to be able to house everybody that is in Central Bedfordshire. And this is just who's on the register at the moment. We have about 170 applications for the register every single week. About 70 of those generally qualify. So we only let those that are most in housing need onto the housing register. So if we go to the next slide, the next slide shows us homelessness approaches. So yes, we've got the housing register, but for those that actually become homeless, either from relationship breakdowns, from the fact that their private rented tenancies are ending, these are the number of people that approach us for that reason. So I think last year we had just over 1,900 approaches, like homeless applications made to Central Bedfordshire Council. That averages at about 40 a week. Since lockdown and COVID started, we had just a big change in numbers, and that's actually gone up to 50 homeless applications being received a week at the moment because of people losing their jobs, people being furloughed, people no longer being able to pay their rent. So it's quite an increase, and yeah, it is quite a scary number. And I think the bit that makes it a little bit scarier is that the courts are still closed. So people aren't being evicted from private rented tenancies at this point in time, but they are opening again in about another month. So if we're already on 50 homeless applications a week, we're not sure of what the number is going to be come end of September once the courts reopen again. The next slide will show us what the main reasons for loss of settled accommodation is. And as I just said, it's the ending of private rented tenancy, and the second reason being family no longer willing to accommodate. During the lockdown, that's switched in the fact that the family not being willing to accommodate is the first reason at the moment. But as I just said, the courts aren't open. So I'm sure once they have opened again, we're going to see quite a rise in people coming to us because of the end of their private rented tenancies, and especially those that haven't been able to pay the rent because of losing jobs over the period. The next slide also then shows that of the people coming to us that are now homeless, they generally have some type of support need. Now, all that means is something in their life means that they've got a type of support need. So it could be that they're fully engaged with services, it could be that they're still working, but they have physical health, or they have a mobility issue or just disability. But 70% of all applications are people that have some type of support need. So our approach to them is very different to, you're not just a landlord to them anymore. You're not just helping them find a property. You're trying to make sure you've got the services wrapped around them to sustain a tenancy going forward. So on the next slide, that sort of talks about how we do that. So most tenancies, if they're going to fail, would fail within the first 6 months. So what we do when somebody makes a homes application is we provide the housing assessment, we do the personalised housing plan, we talk to them about what a practical housing option is. So sometimes someone will not be able to afford a privately rented property. Now that could be due to the size of their family and what their income is. So there's no point in saying to them, you can go and privately rent. But there are other times when someone can afford a privately rented property, and therefore it needs to be a practical housing option for them. And that is the conversation we'll have. So then we talk about what a suitable property is, and we let them know how much they can afford, and we do all that with them so they know what they're looking for. We then have to identify any support needs they've got and make sure that we've got those services in place. So sometimes it could be that somebody's fleeing domestic abuse, so you want to make sure that they're working quite closely with BIDVAs, that they have social workers, there's counselling if it's needed. It could be that somebody's got drug and alcohol issues, so we would refer to health services and get that support in place. But whatever it is, before any tenancy sign up happens, we have to make sure that support's in place. And then for the first 12 months in a tenancy, whether they've gone into a privately rented property or into a Central Bedfordshire property, we do what we call like an introductory tenancy. So within our own, that's something we've done for quite a few years, but we've started that within private rented just to try and make sure that those tenancies don't fail. So to really just try and keep people, or try and prevent what we used to call this revolving door of homelessness, because someone can find a new tenant, new private rented tenancy, 6 months later find themselves in exactly the same position again when that landlord decides they're not going to rent their property any longer. So it's one of the things that we're trying to do to make a difference and manage the housing demand that's coming through our door. On the next slide, this shows the length of stay. So those families that we don't manage to prevent homelessness, or they do become homeless before we find them somewhere else to live, they would then be supplied with what we call transitional accommodation or temporary accommodation. Now, an average length of stay in our homelessness sort of TA is about 25 weeks at the moment. We have 7 households going into temporary accommodation every week, and we have about 7 coming out every week. It sort of stays around the same figure. Last week, we actually had 12 families go into temporary accommodation in that week, which that's quite high. I think that's the highest it's been this year. If you go to the next slide for me, the next slide just shows how we split our housing areas up. We do this for no other reason than data. So Biggleswade is actually an area all by itself. So I think I said earlier on, Biggleswade was number 11. It just helps us when we're looking at breaking down the data and being able to share it with towns and parish councils, sort of what their area looks like. So the next slide is Biggleswade specific. So what this shows us is we've had 290, or we've got 290 applicants on our housing register who are stating that they want to live in Biggleswade because they've got a connection to that area. Last year, we had 176 homeless applications made from people within the Biggleswade area. And this year, we've had 34 homeless applications made from people in Biggleswade so far. We've got 5 units of accommodation for temporary accommodation within Biggleswade, and they are all family-sized units of accommodation. We had 11 private tenants report disrepair that their landlord was not dealing with within private rented properties last year. And this year we've only had 2. We served 2 enforcement notices on private landlords last year, and we actually prosecuted 1 landlord from Biggleswade area last year for disrepair within their property that they didn't deal with. And we also know of 11 houses which are they're managed as houses in multiple occupation, which means they've got multiple people living within that property, not as one household. And we work with those landlords to make sure that the properties are well managed, but the main reason being to make sure that the fire safety sort of guides and regulations are met, because they tend to be more at risk when it's multiple individuals living within one house. So people quite often sort of ask to us how they can help, and particularly when we're talking about rough sleeping. And I would say that we are trying to make sure that everyone reports rough sleepers in the same way and does report them. So we know that there's a lot of members of the public out there that will talk to individuals or will give money to individuals, and that doesn't help us engage them. It doesn't help us get them back into services, and it doesn't help us get them off the street. So I have this slide on here, and this is something that I would ask for everybody, is that if you are aware of rough sleepers in Biggleswade, and I am aware of individuals, so I would ask that they are reported. It could be that you're aware of the same people we are, but it might be that you know of someone that we don't. So this here is, please report rough sleepers to us so that we can engage them properly and hopefully get them off the street. And that's my last slide. So the second slide is just if anyone has any questions for me.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. That's quite telling, isn't it? I think we've learnt a lot about our own town that we probably didn't know before. Can we clear the screen? And I hope, Charlotte, you'll allow us to circulate those slides to councillors now. Thank you. I've already got somebody indicating a question, Councillor Brown and then Councillor Fage.
Good evening, Charlotte. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much. You mentioned affordable housing. A colleague wants to define that to me. Can you define it for me, please? And tell me why social housing isn't on the strategy plan, please.
So when I talk about affordable housing, that I do also mean social housing. So social housing rent is lower than affordable housing rent. Affordable housing just refers to a rent calculation of 80% below market rent. So a market rent is set at an average of what it would be for your local area. So when we talk about affordable, I mean affordable in general. So any social housing, any set at actual affordable levels, when we're purchasing property on the open market, it has been a mixture of affordable and social housing, depending on what we're using those properties for.
And roughly what percentage do you spend on your budget in purchasing property?
So you would need to speak to Nick Costin, which is the other head of service for innovations, but they have a budget that was allocated to them within the council last year. They've done quite a large purchasing programme, And I think there's still quite a way to go with it. In total, when this acquisition started, I think they were tasked with purchasing 250 properties on the open market.
Wow.
I believe they've purchased about 100 of them so far.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Fage?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Charlotte. That was like the Mayor says, very telling actually about our community. We do have a rough sleeping problem in Biggleswade, which I know you're aware of, and I know Noah have done some really good work and are engaging those rough sleepers as best they can. I guess one of my concerns is the number of people that I see giving money to rough sleepers who we know there's a very good chance they have some kind of addiction problem, and as you alluded to in your remarks, it perhaps doesn't really help them. So in terms of messaging for residents and for members of the public, is it okay to stretch as far as saying, maybe obviously it's your choice if you give them money, but be aware of their addiction and would rather you didn't and donated it perhaps to Noah or a charity instead? I can see why that would be logical, but I don't want to put words into your mouth whether or not that's a legit.
So, and I 100% agree. And I think we've been playing with how is the best way to say that to people without giving an adverse opinion of people that rough sleep, because you can't, I don't know, you can't include everyone with the same brush. What I do know for a fact is when you give money to a rough sleeper, they don't need to speak to the professionals. They don't need to speak to services because they have money then to go and buy food and drink, or, you know, get a bed for the night or do something. And it doesn't help in the long run. So we have actually been working on a media campaign. So we went out to tender. That contract was awarded about 2 weeks ago. And part of that is around how we get that messaging out there, as if you're really concerned about somebody that's rough sleeping, the right thing to do is to report them to our outreach services, and actually to point them in the right direction of who they need to speak to. So we will always offer somebody accommodation if they are a rough sleeper and they come to Central Bedfordshire Council. 100% every single time we will offer accommodation. Over the Everyone In campaign that was set by the council, sent by central government, that wasn't anything unusual for us because we already had about 10 or 12, I think it was, rough sleepers discretionarily housed at the start of Everyone In. Nothing to do with COVID. It's just a practice that we've always used. What we have, and Biggleswade is really a key example area, is when someone's been rough sleeping for a long time and hasn't had the need to engage with services, they just don't, they stop. And you had 6 rough sleepers in Biggleswade at the start of the Everyone In campaign. Every single one of them refused accommodation. Every single one of them. Yeah, I do get calls from your residents, members of the public, that are really concerned about them. And I would say those same residents will probably stop in talking to them, giving them money when they see them outside Tesco's. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. I understand why they're doing it, and they're doing it from all of the goodness of their heart. But yeah, it does not help. And I think we're trying to find a good way of getting that message across without sounding like I'm saying don't give your money to a rough sleeper because they're going to spend it on drugs and alcohol, because that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say it's in the long run, it doesn't help anybody.
Understood. No, thank you. I just have one follow-up question, if that's okay, Madam Mayor. I know that the Days In was it called the Days In or in Sandy, will hopefully be becoming available soon. Is that the sort of accommodation which perhaps rough sleepers in Biggleswade might be offered? Because my understanding is perhaps, you know, they feel as though they have a connection to Biggleswade, therefore don't want to accept something in Dunstable. However, if there is something available in Sandy, which is a lot closer to Biggleswade, perhaps there's a better chance of them accepting. Is that something which is perhaps on the agenda?
Yeah, it is. And it's something I will offer again as soon as we've got the Days In. It's not going to be called that. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. We're trying to think of the new name for it. But yeah, as soon as that hotel is up and running, it will be self-contained 1-bed units. That's what we're converting it and refurbishing it into. And yeah, you're right. There's a few of individuals in Biggleswade that we will be offering that to again, in the hope that the proximity might mean they might accept it. What you might want to know is that in the last week, we have had one of your long-term rough sleepers finally engage with us and accept accommodation. So they actually moved into accommodation last week, which is somebody that's been rough sleeping in Biggleswade for a period of about a year or 2 years, I think. So We've just, what we do is we go out, we engage about two or three times a week, and we just continue. You know, we're just trying to build relationships with them until they trust us enough to accept accommodation.
Brilliant. So, sorry, one more if I may. That's superb, by the way. I'm really pleased that someone's accepted, and I think the Days Inn is a newly named, but will be a great idea. I was speaking to a police officer who said that if we see people begging, physically begging, that they should be reported to the police. I again don't want to put words into your mouth, but is that something that we could ask members of the public to do? Is that a helpful thing to do? Is that the right thing to do?
The idea is, you know, if somebody is sitting there and is given money, that for some reason is not causing a nuisance. But if they're actively going up to people and what they would see as not harassing them as such, but yeah, you know, like sort of asking them, that is seen by the police as different, and they can have a different response to it. If somebody's just sitting there minding their own business and the member of the public gives them money, the police is never going to be able to move them on or do anything. So I don't hear, if I'm honest, I don't think I've really had any residents from Biggleswade upset about the fact that there are rough sleepers there. They're more upset about the fact of what they see as the council not helping them, not about the individuals themselves. But yeah, I think if you saw someone actively asking for money or harassing or being intimidating or doing anything that caused an issue, it should be reported to the police.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions for Charlotte? Are we dumbfounded? I think you've given us an awful lot to think about, Charlotte. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
It's obviously a really difficult problem, and we are anxious to do what we can. So you've talked about a media campaign. If the town council can help with that in any way, will you please get back in touch with us? That would be great.
You.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Right, I'm on to members' questions. Do I have any members' questions, please? Councillor Fage.
Yes, we are in the process, hopefully, of getting a new campaign ready for our town centre to encourage people to buy more things locally. We started the ball rolling. I was just wondering whether the town clerk could update us on where we might be and how quickly we can get that up and running, because our town centre needs help immediately.
Yes, Madam Mayor. The banners have been designed and are with a local firm of printers that have been used by the council before. I haven't been able to ascertain from them today when they're going to be ready, but we're rather hopeful that they will be ready in a short time. But I can't give you a further, absolute date at this stage. We will have to contact them again, I think.
That's okay. When we have a draft, if I'm able to have a quick look, that'd be great, please, just to check we've got it right. Thank you for chasing today as well, Philip.
I think we should say that it's a campaign that we're launching as a town council based on the Buy British campaign of donkeys years ago. But this is Buy Biggleswade, support local businesses. And that's the message we're trying to get across to everybody. And hopefully the banners and posters that we're having done will really start to encourage people to use our town for all sorts of reasons, the shops, but also the other businesses in the town, the different services. So let's hope we can get that up and running as soon as possible. Sorry, was it Councillor Alban wanted to ask a question? Yes.
Yeah, it was more an observation, really. I was really pleased to see the market looking a lot better on Saturday. There were more stalls. It seemed fairly busy, but what was noticeable was the new layout, which looked very good, I thought. And kind of related to the last question, that's a way of attracting people into the town to have an attractive market, and it did look attractive. I know it was nice weather, but the way it was laid out was really good. So I know the market superintendent and the town centre manager have been looking to get this into place for some time, but finally it's there, and it did look very good. So well done them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alban. Does anybody else wish to ask a question? Okay, I'm moving on to minutes of the meeting of the 28th of July. So I'm going through first for accuracy, please. Anything on page 1? Page 2? Councillor Fage.
Yes, item 6A about the decluttering. So this was my question or comment. Firstly, it's not the planning officers that we were asked to engage. It was Sam Colbeck, wherever he works. I know he's not a planning officer. Secondly, the minute is inaccurate. Councillor Foster and Councillor Bond were not asked to liaise with anyone at Central Beds. The action, and I've rewatched the clip, the action was very clear, and that was for the town centre operations manager to copy them into the existing loop of emails. It wasn't for them to go off unilaterally and do something. It was for them to be looped in. That was what the minute should be, and that's what the action should be.
Okay, is council comfortable with that change? Yeah.
Back to that in matters arising as well.
Okay. I think that's all been superseded by what we've been told in the last few days, which I spoke about earlier. So something is going to happen under the pandemic, if I can put it like that. And we'll see what happens after that, what the market square looks like. Okay, anything else on page 2? Page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Page 8? Okay, so may I sign those as an accurate record of our meeting, please? Can you indicate if you're in favour? Thank you very much. So we're now going through the minutes again for matters arising. Anything on page 1, please? Page 2? Councillor Fage.
Yeah, so back on item 6A, just to be clear, from my understanding, this action that I've just corrected wasn't actioned in it, and it wasn't actioned. From my understanding, the report actually came because Councillor Watkins chased Sam Colbeck, from my understanding. So just perhaps we could just thank Councillor Watkins for that chase.
Okay. What we got was not a report, it was the plan of the market square, and it wasn't at all clear what was going to happen with the street furniture. And Councillor Watkins and I, and unfortunately Councillor Fage couldn't join us, and Councillor Bond did join us. We were able to have a quick Zoom call with the highways officer in charge and with Sam Colbeck, and that's where I got the information which I updated council with earlier, and which will be in the next set of minutes. Okay. Anything on page 3, please? Councillor Pullinger, then Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Reference item 8C, the Orchard Centre. Please could we have an update on the works to the floor and progress to reopening the Orchard Centre?
If I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yes, I understand that the flooring, I think they're the separation joints that are going to be put in to stop the floor moving, have actually now been installed. We're waiting for settlement. I'm informed that either this week or next week, the floor covering will then be put down, and then after that, we'll be able to give you a date.
Okay. You're going to have to be patient, Councillor Pullinger. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Backing up to item 8A and helping Biggleswade Town Centre, may I have an update on the implementation of the revised parking orders that we approved in February, please?
I'll try and keep a straight face. I emailed again following last week's for the meeting 2 weeks ago to the office of Marcel Coffey. I have not had an acknowledgement. I don't know what else I can do. I am really sort of hoping that our joint hatted councillors could help their officers on this one, because it doesn't matter how many I've sent. I actually sent to Councillor Bond, I'm sure he will confirm, the complete email trail going back to February that I've been sending on this particular topic. So beyond that, I can't comment, because I've had no response even to my most recent repetition of a reminder to Marcel Coffey, copied to his secretary, but also sent directly to him.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
I'll happily take this up with Marcel. I'll try and give a response before next council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else on page 3? Page 4? Page 5? Page 6? Page 7? Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 11E, the website working group. I thought I'd just give Council a quick update on progress. So the working group met last week on the 6th of August. We received a report from the office manager on progress to date in terms of contacting providers for a new website. We discussed what process we're going to follow to get quotations to bring to council, and we're currently working and collaborating online through SharePoint to finalise the requirements to send to the companies to quote for us. So there's 3 or 4 companies that we have preliminarily identified as potentially suitable, and we are aiming to go through the process of receiving and reviewing the quotations to bring a recommendation to the full council meeting on the 8th of September.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bond, you're still indicating. Did you want to come in on that? Okay, thank you. Anything else on page 7? Page 8. Okay, I think we've finished with matters arising. Moving on to planning applications. The first one is 148B Drove Road, 2-storey side extension to form garden / dining room and ensuite. Any comments, colleagues?
No objection, subject to neighbours.
Everybody happy with that?
Yep.
Okay. 15 Ripon Court, a front porch. Any comments?
Proposed no objection, subject to neighbours.
Everybody happy? Thank you. Now, the new in public house. Refurbishment and extension of the site for a restaurant and bar and 2 residential units and a 2-storey distillery. Comments, please, councillors. Councillor Woodhead.
Yes, I mean, I think on the whole, I think the development should be welcomed. I think it'd draw more people back into the town centre. I mean, obviously, we need to see what a COVID future high street's going to look like, but it'll certainly bring a bit more life, and it is looking shabbier and shabbier by the day. But the question I had really was about this a sort of assisted living flats that they're saying they're going to be upstairs, and I just wondered if there's any more information about that, because it's not very clear to me that it's perhaps a wise idea to have accommodation like that above a licensed premises. But if anybody knows a bit more about it, then please share. But otherwise, on the whole, I'm very much in favour. But it's just the residential accommodation above is a bit of an odd choice. But yeah, that'd be my only objection.
Okay, I hadn't picked that up. Councillor Foster.
I think this is really good news, and it's something we should welcome. It's great to see that a company is investing in our town and being prepared to spend money, substantial money by the look of it, to actually make use of an existing building that is dear to the heart of Biggleswade. So I'm very pleased to see this application.
Thank you. I don't yet have a proposal. Does somebody wish to make a proposal? Councillor North, you're indicating.
Well, firstly, just to say that I agree with Councillor Foster, and I would propose that we have no objection to the development.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any other comments that people want to make? Okay, so we have a proposal to welcome this, no objection. All those in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, apart from Councillor Bond, who isn't voting on planning issues because he's a member of development management. So that's unanimous. Can I ask something of colleagues? Because I've heard on the grapevine that there's been discussion about whether the New Inn's name should be changed, because previously the New Inn had a bit of a poor reputation. Does anybody have any comments about that? I mean, I have to say, I'd like to see it continue to be called the New Inn. It's been the New Inn for as long as I can remember, and I think my parents. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, just to agree with you, Madam Mayor, that's what it is. I know it in the distant past. Now it had a bit of a rough reputation, but it improved recently. So it's been the New Inn for as long as it's been there, I think. So yeah, I just don't see any reason for it to be changed.
Thank you. Councillor Bond?
I would agree as well, actually, to that point. Looked at other proposals for names. I think the New Inn's actually goes back to when it was actually the original inn was destroyed. So it's not new at all, but it's distinguished to distinguish itself. I don't see any reason to change the New Inn. When I first came to Biggleswade, it didn't have a good reputation. It was infinitely better before it closed. And I don't think the name really has, and there's no stigma associated with the current name. I'd actually be quite happy for it to remain.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
I agree. I think the New Inn is part of Biggleswade and should remain so.
I'm getting a lot of nods, so I think we could pass that on to the people who need to know that, because I was quite surprised that people wanted to change the name. I shouldn't really say it online, but I think my mother used to drink there, and that would be an awful lot of years ago when she was a young woman. Okay, I'm going on to 8 Dartmoor Way, Biggleswade. Single-storey side extension and driveway for off-street parking. Any comments, councillors?
No objection, subject to neighbours.
Yeah. Thank you. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. 63 High Street, the old HSBC building. Conversion to a physiotherapy clinic and 2 residential flats and a new residential block to the back of the site. Colleagues, comments, please. Councillor Pullinger and then Councillor Mark Foster.
Thank you. So firstly, I noticed that this is actually a listed building consent application rather than the full application. So I'm guessing we may see this come forward again when the actual full application is made. So overall, I think I would propose no objection. There's a couple of things that I think we should note. Reading through their access plan and their transport assessment and things, one of the things that would not ordinarily be a concern for a residential property on a site is around parking. Their sustainability assessment does consider this, and the pre-application advice they've had from Central Beds around the fact that it's considered sustainable due to the town centre location. And that, combined with the overwhelming benefit that I think we'll get for the town with having the premises occupied and used for a business like a physiotherapy centre, overcomes the fact that overall there'll be no additional parking as a result of as alongside the new flats. I think the property will draw people into the town, and hopefully they will then go on to go and use local businesses as well as using the services. I think one thing we ought to note in our response, though, is that in line with our parking policy, any residents that do occupy the new residential properties will not be eligible for residence parking permits, to ensure that the applicants are aware of that. But otherwise, as I say, I propose no objection.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that proposal?
Yeah.
Thank you. I do. Councillor Mark Foster, you wanted to speak.
I did. To be fair, I'm not really interested in duplication of words. I think Councillor Plunger is pretty much summed up my thoughts, so I've nothing further to say really on that matter.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Bond.
Thank you. I've had a look at the CBC website, and normally we'd get these applications, a pair of listed building and a full application. Both there's on the website, there is a full application and listed building, both together with the same validation date. So for some odd reason, this is a missing. I don't know if what's appropriate, because normally we'd handle them both together. Maybe the town council might want to not make a decision on this now and actually, and at next meeting, handle both the full and the listed building consent, or happily take the listed building now. But not, it seems to be an omission about not receiving the application.
Well, when we have both, I can't remember a time when we made a separate decision on listed building. So I would have thought if we take a decision now, it'll be a nod through if we get the full application. Do colleagues think that? I'm getting a few nods around the room, I was going to say. Councillor Fage.
One thing that I might just add, and I have expressed a non-pecuniary interest in this, so won't be voting, but the proximity to George's Hall, which does have a late licence and obviously has loud music playing, is not something which makes the flats inappropriate, but maybe we could just, I agree with no objection, by the way, but just perhaps a footnote to say that we'd like to see sort of mitigations in place to make sure that sort of appropriate soundproofing, etc. I mean, whilst we want to help this business and this unit potentially to thrive, and the flats are a part of that, that mustn't be at the detriment of existing businesses which are well established. And you know, I'd hate for George's Hall, who are still closed, by the way, to be struggling with noise complaint, or you know, people complaining about noise, despite the fact that George's Hall has been there a hell of a lot longer than those flats. So maybe that's a footnote that Councillor Pullinger might like to add, but I won't be proposing it, given I've given a non-pecuniary interest.
I think, has the mayor frozen?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's a good job holding that face if she hasn't.
Behave.
Do you accept the amendment to your proposal?
Councillors, may I suggest that in the absence of the mayor, the deputy mayor perhaps should take over as chair at this point?
Is there any issue with him being having a non-pecuniary interest in this item?
Well, he won't be able to vote, but he can just basically call on, unless members object to that. I don't know what Nina feels about that.
No, I think that's the right thing to do. For
I was just about to say exactly the same, although Councillor Bond has his hand up.
Yeah, so I'll temporarily take over then, shall I? Thank you. Councillor
Thank
Bond.
you. Thank you. You made a comment about noise and protecting St. George's Hall. You know, that's obviously a very strong point, because it's very difficult when houses are built next to current establishments, and then of course the establishment still can actually receive complaints for noise. I actually raised this at last DMC, and I think it's one of the things that needs actually some clarification, actually legal clarification, because I was basically told by the legal representative at DMC is that you can't do anything about it. You as council cannot refuse to accept noise complaints from neighbours, regardless of what mitigations have been put in place. So I think it's one of the things in situations like this, when we have flats next to pubs and clubs and other shops and so on, we actually do need to try and find something a bit more concrete as to how we can comfortably approve these applications without being a detriment to the existing buildings. That's just a side. Obviously, it doesn't make much difference here because there will be a noise assessment.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm no legal expert, but I think there's a concept of a deed of easement or something, and this is covered by the National Planning Policy Framework, the latest version that essentially is designed to ensure that new developments can coexist with existing, businesses. So I think it's certainly something we should note.
Can I come back on that then?
Yes, you can. Yes, Councillor Bond.
That's what I thought, because the stables at in Milton Keynes were able to do this, but they actually lost it on appeal, but not for this reason. They lost on appeal because it should have gone in with the original outline planning application rather than reserved matters later on. And I was told very clearly at DMC is that I'm wrong. So you obviously, Councillor Mark Knight, you're wrong as well. So obviously there must be an issue. That's why we do need some clarification on this, because otherwise we haven't got the right guidance. And if you want to see how I was told I was wrong, go and watch last month's DMC.
It doesn't prevent us from putting the footnote if we want to, though, I guess. Does anyone else have further comment on this? So we've Councillor Brown.
Councillor Bond, just expand on that. Is he saying that that if we don't object, if we allow this to go through, then it will be counterproductive to the establishments already there?
Councillor Bond, do you want to respond?
I could barely hear that. I apologise. I couldn't actually hear what Councillor Brown was saying.
I think we're ending up a little bit down a rabbit warren here.
So do you want me to? So it's my proposal.
Could I ask Councillor Pullinger to just restate his proposal at a high level, and then if anyone wants further clarity on that, we can take it. If not, we'll move to a vote. So Councillor Pullinger, please.
Yeah. So I propose no objection with two notes. One, that to clarify our policy position regarding residents' parking permits and new developments, and that therefore the residents of those premises will not be eligible for residents' parking permits. We could also add, however, the business will still be eligible for workers' permits, just to avoid any confusion. And then the second element, no, which I will accept from yourself, Councillor Fage, is that we should ask Central Bedfordshire planning officers to take due consideration of the impact of noise from the existing business next door, and that there should be a suitable noise assessment to ensure that their houses have sufficient soundproofing for the flats.
Thank you. I think that clarifies. Are there any last comments on that before we move to a vote? No. Okay. I think that was seconded by Councillor Knight previously. I presume that's still okay. So all those in favour of no objection, subject to those two footnotes. 8, 9 against. Abstentions. Councillor Bond has abstained. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Item 9G, Land East of Biggleswade revised planning application. So, yes, Councillor Pullinger.
Yeah, so we received some further feedback on this from Central Bedfordshire today, essentially stating that there's no material changes. It's really further information that they requested from the applicant that has now been provided, predominantly around environmental assessments and impact assessments. From having a very brief, and I admit it's very brief, scan of the new documents, I don't believe there's anything in there that would materially change our view on the overall application, and therefore I would propose that we just reply to reiterate our previous position.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, Councillor Brown, thank you. So the one, yes, Councillor Orban.
Yeah, just to say that I will be taking the same position on this as I did last time. As the application hasn't changed materially, I objected to the new road going to into Dunton Lane when we heard this previously, and I still hold the same sort of reservations about this, so I won't be voting in favour.
Thank you for that. I guess I will take further comments in a moment. I guess the only question is, given that this clarification on what has changed only came quite late today, whether or not we want a little bit more time to consider these further documents. I'm not saying we do, but if we do, I think that option is available to us. And I'm not trying to influence Councillor Pullinger's proposal there, but I'm putting it out there in case anyone else holds any or has any thoughts around that. So are there further comments? Councillor Mark Foster.
Yeah, I'm of that view, Councillor Page. I think we probably need to give ourselves a little bit more time to review the documents, be clear on what changes there are. I appreciate Councillor Pullinger's comments, but like him, I haven't had an opportunity to fully review the documents, and would like to do that before I make a formal decision. I think so my proposal, which is I guess a counter proposal, is that we hold and give ourselves time and review it at the next council meeting.
Okay. Any further thoughts on that before we move to a vote? Councillor Pullinger, if you wanted to respond to Councillor Foster's point, of course you can, before we move to a vote.
I would just say that although we only got the clarification saying which documents had changed today, the documents were available on the CBC website, and the dates of when documents were uploaded was also on there. So some of them, it was possible for us to review those documents since we were notified on the agenda last week. I mean, as I say, I think personally, I think we should vote on my proposal. Of course, if that, I believe, if that isn't agreed, then we can someone can put another proposal on to respond differently.
Very well. Okay. Councillor Frank Foster.
So this effectively means we have to vote down Councillor Pullinger's resolution to allow time for Councillor Mark Foster's resolution. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless the clerk wants to correct me on that, but we have a proposal which has been seconded, and if that's rejected, then we can have a counter proposal.
No, that is absolutely correct. There was a proposal and a second. In order to, you cannot sort of have a negating amendment, so therefore you have to take the original resolution. If that's not voted for, then you can go to a new proposal to defer to a future meeting. But you have to vote on this one first.
Thank you. I thought so. Councillor Strawn.
What is the exact proposal being put forward by Councillor Pullinger? Was it that we should repeat what we said previously, or is it?
Well, actually,
could you clarify that?
Rather than just repeat, it was actually to just refer to our previous letter and say we have no further comments. So to reiterate our previous letter, essentially.
So shouldn't the proposal be effectively to repeat that exact objection? Because I think there are about 4 points that were raised, including the Dunton Lane access. So
it's the same application. So we can that non-objection with comments is already on the portal as part of the application consultation. So my proposal is that we reply to this additional consultation to say that we have our comments, our previous comments remain our comments. So
okay, thank you. Right, we're going to move to a vote on this then, please. The proposal is as Councillor Pullinger has just said. All those who are in favour of that proposal, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay, against? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that is carried. So we refer back to our original comments rather than taking more time to consider. That's fine. Item 9H, 25 Sun Street, Biggleswade, replacement and enlargement of single-storey rear extension. Comments, please.
Proposed, no objection, subject to neighbours.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Item 9I, 15 Sycamore Close, two-storey side and single-storey rear extension. Comments, please. Councillor Frank Foster.
No objection, subject to neighbours.
Thank you. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm seeing nods. Item 9J, 2 Station Chambers, Station Road, change of unit from A1 mix to A1A4 with internal alterations. It's going to be a craft beer shop, just as a footnote to that. Councillor Pullinger.
Yes, I think again, welcome a new business to the town. I think it will be a good addition to the town, and we should support it. So I propose no objection.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm impartial. Yes. Is there a seconder for no objection? Frank Foster, Councillor Foster. Thank you. Should we just raise our hands to that? All those in favour of basically welcoming it? Thank you. Thank you. Yes, that's carried. Brilliant. Pretty sure there are a few councillors who will be able to help them out in their first few weeks of trading. Item 9K, Little Acre 1, Langford Road, Biggleswade. My understanding on this application is that the only thing that has changed is the insertion of the words gypsy/traveller to denote the caravan, to refer to the caravans. Are there any comments on this, please? Councillor Pullinger.
Yeah, so I'm again essentially the same proposal as last time. I'll propose we refer to our previous comments, and which was no objection.
Okay. Is that okay with everybody? Oh, sorry, Councillor Strawn, beg your pardon. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Chairman. I looked at the application, in particular the comments that were made on it by people such as in respect of archaeology, highways with regard to vision, etc. And I'm a bit concerned that there are concerns that have been raised by those comments that possibly we should be reviewing. And I think it's difficult, as we made a decision previously on this, but on reviewing those comments, there are certainly some concerns over the development of this site in this way.
I think from my understanding that's a little bit tricky because we are slightly constrained if we've already made a decision, and unless this refers to the new wording, which I'm not sure archaeology would do, then I think we might be restricted in how we can respond to that. Are there any further comments? No. Okay, so I think the response is that we refer back as suggested by Councillor Pullinger to our previous comments, given that it's the inclusion of these two words. There don't seem to be any objections on that basis. So is that okay? Am I getting nods? Okay, thank you. Item 9L, 24 Broadmead, proposed demolition of existing outbuilding and extension. Any comments on this, please? We go.
Subject to neighbours.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Is that all right, everybody? Yes, thank you. And item M, we don't normally get down to M. Okay, land at the rear of 3357 Shortmead Street, Biggleswade. Now, this has been called in by Councillor Bond. So, Councillor Pullinger.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what has changed since we strongly objected to this application to essentially change the previously approved planning permission. So we objected strongly in May. I can't see any changes whatsoever to what's on the planning portal. So I'm not sure on what basis they are consulting again. So I would propose that we reiterate our strong objections on the same grounds as previously.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Strawn.
I agree with Councillor Pullinger. I think we've effectively got the Pullinger motion now, as opposed to the Skinner motion that we had in the past, in that we've decided this a few months ago within the 6-month period. It seems to be exactly the same. The comments should be exactly the same in my view, and therefore I'd second Councillor Pullinger's proposal.
Okay, that's been seconded. Are there any further comments on this? So, Councillor Ian Bond.
I think this is actually quite immaterial. This is actually up for DMC next week, any case. So after being called in, Town Council asked me to call it in. I called it in and it's at DMC next week. So it's fairly pointless. I've checked everything on the website. There is nothing new. There are no new consultations. So I have no idea why on earth it's been sent in again. So you're welcome to pass comment on it, but nothing's changed.
That's fine. Okay. Well, we have the proposal, we have the second. Shall we move to a vote? All those in favour of reiterating the point that I think we've made about 12 times now to strongly object to this. Okay, thank you. That's unanimous, with the exception of Councillor Bond. Item 11, items for consideration. Diversion of footpath 24. Any comments on this, please? Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So yet again, we seem to have a footpath order that seems to be dated sometime in the past, in this case, 2018. So I'm not quite sure why it's coming to us. That said, however, I don't see any reason for us to object to this diversion. It essentially is moving the footpath from going across a field to the side of a field from what I can see. Yeah, but it's just curious as to why it's dated 2018.
Okay, Councillor David Alban.
Yeah, I share the curiosity. We have seen this before, and we did consider it, and we didn't object to it. So I really don't know why it's come back. It would be difficult to object to it because it's actually part of a building site now, and there's footings all over the original course. So yeah.
Okay.
I suggest we do not object to it.
That's fine. Are there any last comments on this? No, so we're not objecting to this as we did previously, and it doesn't really matter because it looks like it's already underway. So okay, we'll go with that if that's okay. If I'm seeing nods to that, thank you. Okay, our favourite topic, item 11B, street naming, land at Sorrel Way. 93 apartment retirement home. So this is to go over the this is the field with the 93 retirement homes in them. So I think Councillor Mark Foster is indicating.
I am indicating. I thought I'd try and get in before Councillor Pullinger does on this occasion. I think on this one, I live on Sorrel Way. It's pretty much opposite where I live. That's sort of immaterial. I guess there's I should have perhaps made a comment on that. Non-pecuniary interest in this case. The proposed development, as it's going forward now, is on the Herbs estate. And my view is that the development should have some form of herb-related name. And I think because it's in keeping, we've also got flowers nearby. So my proposal is that we have a name of something of that nature. And my idea really is Chamomile Court.
Chamomile Court. Lovely. That's perfect. Thank you. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So a couple of points just to go.
Sorry, hold on. I think that was a proposal from Councillor Foster. I should have probably just asked for a seconder. We have a seconder for Chamomile Court. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pullinger.
Okay, so a couple of comments. So firstly, we were asked for 2 to 3 names. So I've got a couple of other backup suggestions in line with the herb theme. Before I do though, I think I will need to ask Councillor Foster to make an amendment. And the reason for this, having read through the document, is we can't use the suffix court for a road. Court can only be used for the building itself. So I think we could suggest a name with court in it, a herb-related name with court in it for the name of the building, but not for the road itself. So you may want to amend what the suffix is on that. But the 3 that I had, so I was thinking of Clove Court myself, but the other 3 that I was thinking were Parsley Place, Catnip Close and Cardamom Close.
Okay, I think Clove is too close to Clover Close, which is just off of Foxglove Drive. Do you have a preference over, what was it, Parsley and Catsnip? And
Parsley Place and Catnip Close and Cardamom Close were the three that I...
Okay, I'm going to come back to Councillor Foster just because you're basically suggesting an amendment to his proposal. So, Councillor Foster.
I take on board Councillor Pullinger's point. I'm certainly not in favour of catnip. I wouldn't want to live in a road that's named after catnip. So that might be someone else's thoughts, but I wouldn't be supporting that one. Parsley Place, I have no objection to. Cardamom, whatever, again, no objection to. And I take your point about using the word court for a road, but I think chamomile, whether that's the name of the development, I think it's probably that could be the development. We use something else as the road.
Okay.
So happy to take on board that feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Are there any further comments on this? No.
I'm happy to withdraw catnip from my amendment.
Thank you.
I don't think it was accepted anyway. Okay, we'll reply with those three names. Did you want to preference any of them, Councillor Foster, or should we just reply with those three?
I think we should reply with those three, but clearly I have a biased view on it because I've proposed chamomile, but I'm happy to take all three forward.
Thank you. Councillor Alban.
As there are maybe restrictions on the use of court, for instance, can we just offer the three names of the herbs and leave the rest for the planners or whoever to decide?
I think we can do that. Yeah, I think that's okay. So we have the proposal, we have it seconded. They're chamomile, parsley, and something else.
Cardamom.
Thank you. All those in favour of going back with those three names? Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Well done, everyone. Councillor, sorry, beg your pardon. Item 11C, committee meetings. Councillors to consider requests from Councillor Frank Foster to reinstate committee meetings. Councillor Frank Foster, did you want to speak on this?
Yes, please. Got a few points to make, really. As everybody will remember, formal committee meetings have been suspended now for about 6 months, obviously due to the coronavirus pandemic. The original reason for suspending them was a combination of circumstances caused by COVID-19. This included the need to set up a workable virtual system, which we're using now, coupled with our part-time officer situation and the reduced working time of the office staff. This made the production of agendas and minutes and follow-up actions very difficult. The situation is now much improved. We're now successfully holding virtual council meetings and the town hall is now open during normal working hours. This being the case, I believe the time is now right for formal committee meetings to be resumed. Although the work of the committees has continued informally, with actions as necessary being dealt with via the council meeting agendas, I believe that we now need to make our committee meetings public once again and publish formal agendas and minutes. I would therefore like to propose 2 resolutions. Firstly, that the council resumes formal committee meetings forthwith, either virtually via Zoom or physically in the town hall building as soon as the regulations allow this to happen. Secondly, that our officers put together a programme of meeting dates at 3-monthly intervals to cover all committees, with the first of each meeting to take place on Tuesday, the 15th of September.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Knight. Further comments on this, councillors? Councillor Mark Foster.
Yeah, I think I support this. I think that we do need to review the programme of committee meeting dates. I think it's clear that we put together a schedule which included more meetings previously. I think given the circumstances and to be fair, given recent feedback as well, I think it's right for us to review the number of committee meetings. We do need to get them back in place, but it's right, I think, to review the schedule down back to what the previous schedule was, but to get things in place and get things moving. I think it will allow us to actually get things more publicly aware, allow residents to know what's actually happening.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Woodward, and then I'll bring in the clerk. Woodhead, I beg your pardon. Sorry, Councillor Woodhead. Sorry.
I mean, I'm broadly in favour of the proposal. It was just, can we involve obviously our new town clerk in that as well? I just would like his, not necessarily decision or whatever, but just so this is something he's aware of in terms of planning, obviously staff workloads and appraisals and bits and bobs going ahead. So it's just a kind of a way of encouraging him to be involved in that decision, basically. But otherwise, I think it's broadly a good idea, and it can get us back to some sort of business as usual.
Thank you. Does the clerk want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I think that in principle, we will need to have formal committee meetings, certainly in the October cycle, because that's the opportunity for the committees to begin to inform the budget process, which will then take you through to F&GP in November, and then obviously through to January. What I'm conscious of is that we have only, and this schedule that was originally produced, which is still on the website, obviously suspended, was produced by the deputy town clerk and presented to the council before the lockdown, as members will be aware. But the meeting dates only go up till December. So I think the suggestion, certainly, I'm not certain about the 15th of September, we'll have to look at that as a formal meeting, but certainly the October ones would need to be there to inform the budget process. But I think it's right, as has been pointed out, that the new town clerk should have an input from there onwards. So the meeting dates from basically the 1st of January forward to the end of the municipal year are something which he ought to be involved with very closely. That's the officer view that I would give to the council.
I think that's fair. I think one thing, I'll bring in Councillor Foster again in a moment, but I think it is for officers to propose a schedule of meetings and obviously involving the new town clerk, and then for councillors either to approve or not to. I think Councillor Foster's proposal incorporates something that gives officers that opportunity to say, this is now where we are. The ball is, it is entirely up to you to come forward with a schedule that is workable for you. I think, if I'm understanding Councillor Foster's proposal correctly, but I don't want to put words into his mouth. Councillor Foster, did you want to come back, and then I'll bring in Councillor Pullinger, then we'll move to a vote.
Yes, please. The reason I put in the 3-month time limit between, that was how it was before. And since that time, we've had advice from certainly Nina and also the interim town clerk and the acting town clerk that we have had too many meetings. And that number of meetings was increased after the intake of councillors last time, but we've been advised that we've had too many meetings and that we need more time between them to get things done and get them action. And I think that's good advice which we should heed. That's why I put the 3-month in there. That doesn't preclude having extra committee meetings if there is a need.
Thank you. Councillor Pullinger, and then we'll move to a vote.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to say I strongly support that we should reintroduce the formal committee meetings. I just would like, on the basis that the schedule that we will need to have is changed from the one that we've previously approved, which I think had the meetings every 2 months. Can I suggest a slight amendment to the proposal that the proposed schedule for meetings to, if we maybe to the end of this calendar year is presented at the next council meeting for us to approve, starting, as Councillor Foster said, from the 15th of September, and then we can work with the new town clerk for him to propose a schedule for next calendar year.
Is that okay, Councillor Foster?
I don't think that amendment's necessary because it can be changed anyway. I really don't think that amendment's necessary.
Okay, maybe we just note that hopefully at the next meeting we can review this.
Of course, when the new town clerk comes in, he will have his views, and of course we will take his views on board and we'll vote as a council which way to go.
Very well. Councillor Strawn.
The problem with going to next council meeting is it'll be the second day that the new town clerk will be in post, I believe. And that is, I think, totally unreasonable for him to have to make that decision within that period of time. I've just literally have arrived in the office. So it needs to be dealt with as soon as possible. We need to be back at the meetings as possible. But the idea of actually necessarily having it firmed up when he won't even had an input into the agenda at that stage is probably unfair on him, as he's the person who's got to implement it.
Good observation.
September the 15th is not the day after he starts, Councillor Strawn.
Councillor Strawn was referring to a remark which I made about bringing this to the next council meeting, which is correct. It would be his second.
I always thought that was completely unrealistic anyway.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that. I was thinking of sometime in September. So the proposal is the proposal. So it's to reinstate the committee meetings and for staff to come forward with a schedule of meetings as soon as possible, which council can look at, involving the new town clerk, and with the intention of starting those mid-September, 15th of September. So that is the proposal. It has been seconded. All those in favour, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 12A, planning application outcomes. I'll hazard a guess what Councillor Pullinger wants to talk about. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So some good news, which is not so good news, is that the application that I have been a broken record about at Bonds Lane has now been formally decided and approved, which obviously we objected to. So that in itself is disappointing, but I am pleased that it is actually now no longer something that I'm going to have to raise at every meeting going forward.
Hopefully we can badger them for Section 106 money for our town centre, given that it is right in the heart of town. Any further comments on the planning application outcomes, or can we just note them? Okay, then we will just note them. Thank you. Item 12B, temporary closure of footpath 36. Where is this? This is not one that we've seen before, I don't think. Any comments on this, please? Councillor Pullinger, sorry, yes.
I believe this is one that we actually commented on at the last meeting, and this is just notification that it's been formally sealed and implemented.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, sorry. No, you're right. So we can note this then. Item 12C, Chapel at Drove Road. So surveyor is producing a tender document for the chapel, which is required to obtain quotes. This has been expedited and should not take long before it is received. So we should be getting some quotes soon. Are there any comments on this? I'm aware of the urgency of this one. Councillor Frank Foster.
Yes, I've had words with the works manager about this. Yeah, I know he has been pressing for some action on this to actually get the thing moving along. It's top of the loss agenda, really. But also they're doing extra work within the Drove Road Cemetery, tidying up the entrances and also around the pathways. So a lot of work is going on in the cemetery.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any further comments on this? Councillor Thomas, are you signalling?
Yes. Yeah, I went through there today, and they were actually doing it today, so it's a lot tidier than it was last week. There's three guys in there doing quite a lot of work, so that's good. It's good to see.
That's good to see. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Okay, shall we note this and hope that we see those quotes quite soon, because this is a very important building for us that is going to need some very delicate work done to it. So hopefully we get some good quotes once we go out to tender. Item 13, public open session. So this we will adjourn for a period of 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions to the council. Each speaker will have 1 3-minute slot, and this can be about anything, so it doesn't have to pertain to items that we have discussed this evening. So would any member of the public like to speak? Please raise your virtual hand now. Okay, I'm not seeing any indications, so we move on. Item 14, exempt items. We don't have an exempt items agenda to discuss. Can I just ask the clerk how I take this agenda item, please? Because there are, of course, minutes and potentially matters arising which councillors may wish to discuss. So do I take a vote on whether or not we move to an exempt session?
Well, I think the first thing, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Is that the situation is that you have already adopted the minutes because as we have been advising both Nina and myself that all the minutes actually sort of should go together and the exempt minutes are now produced at that time. If there were matters arising, technically, I think members should have raised that they wanted to raise it at that point, and then it would be deferred. So I think the assumption is, unless anybody objects and wants to, formally put the resolution that there are no exempt items.
Okay. Does anybody want to put the resolution, or can we close the meeting? Very well. Okay, so we have no exempt items. There we go. That's how we're going to be dealing with those ones from now on. That's absolutely fine. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Apologies, I don't know where the mayor's gone. I hope she's okay. But thank you all very much. And sorry, Councillor Bond, are you indicating?
I've had communication from the mayor. She had she lost her all internet from outside. She's tried rebooting. She can't come back in. Okay, so I said to her, in future we'll try and sort out phones, but I told her it was that you'd actually, it was in your capable hands.
That's very kind of you. Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of feedback, so that's fine. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending this meeting, and I look forward to speaking to you again in 2 weeks' time, perhaps with a new town clerk attending as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Thank you.